on Facebook.
Ann is back.
Ann is back. Watch out.
Here she comes.
Thank you to Marin and Chris Cooper for filling in. Just making our final notes to ourselves to get ready to do this show.
A lot to cover.
Once again, lots of news.
I think we should go back to doing it every day. We never did such a thing.
Never. And we'd still fill up an entire hour.
Coming right up on time here.
Okay. Well, we have a few seconds. Do. All right.
And we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm, and welcome back.
Remember me? Hey, Andy. I've been gone a few weeks. Anything happen?
You stole my line.
I've been practicing it for days.
You stole my line. No, but we do actually have some news.
Oh, my God.
You of course know this week that Trump dodged 2 bullets. We'll talk about what that means. And
it took me a minute to figure it out, but I did.
Took a running mate who compared him to Hitler.
Yes, he did. Happy to say that the U.S. is waking up to the threat of Project 2025.
But then we're up against people like independent U.S. Senator Joe Manchin, who has joined the Republicans in banning trans care from the military and their families.
But in the United States House of Representatives, an anti-gay rider to a bill was narrowly defeated. They did other bad stuff.
Yes. New York voters will now decide whether to ban discrimination based on sex, sexual orientation, gender identity in their state, our state constitution.
A federal judge rejects Florida's attempt to get its law against transgender health care enforced. That's good.
Who says there's no good news? Nassau County, New York, out on Long Island, sued again for discriminating against trans girls and women in sports.
But we're sort of going back and forth on these headlines. Yeah. Anti-LGBTQ school board members in California were successfully recalled in a San Francisco suburb.
And a tiny town in Minnesota got its first gay mayor.
I like the picture of him. That's a tease. Dr. Ruth, who got Americans talking about sex just as the HIV epidemic began to rise, dies at the age of 96.
The Russians, who may come to power in this next election here, sentenced out journalist Masha Gessen in absentia for Ukraine war comments.
We mourn the death of John Hatchett, early leader of the PWA coalition.
And historians discuss Abraham Lincoln's love for men in a new documentary. So,
Larry Kramer, you died just a little too soon to say, I told you so.
I hope he's in it.
Well, I hope so, too.
And I'm glad you're here and eager for your perspective on the month's events.
Well, like everyone else, I'm sure I go up and down and up and down and in and out. And Biden, yes, Biden, no. Trump, yes, Trump, no. It's a mess. Who knows? Who knew? So much happens almost every day that we could not have predicted. It's just astonishing.
And exhausting.
Oh, my God, yes. Whoa, sorry.
And good for you for watching, tuning in. And we are going to try to sort it all out. And, of course, the biggest news, now we're in the midst of the Republican convention, was the assassination attempt on Mr. Trump. The gunman was a 20-year, we have that picture up there of Trump, and this, of course, has become iconic. And, of course, at the convention, they're all doing it, raising the fist and saying, fight, fight, fight.
This could win him in the election, is just this picture.
Right. It's.
But there is some dispute, which we're eager to investigate, about whether he was actually hit by a bullet or did the bullet hit the teleprompter and then the shards of glass hit his ear. Who knows? But he was certainly wounded, and
there was some blood drawn.
Now he's Jesus.
Well, the gunman was a 20-year-old Republican, a nursing home employee. Most people said was a bullied loner known for his isolation in high school. Thomas Crooks wore a T-shirt from Demolition Ranch, a YouTube channel that explores the capabilities of firearms and explosive devices. He was armed with an AR-15, his daddy's. He killed one man in the rally and wounded, I believe, 2 others. And he grazed the ear of Trump somehow, coming within an inch of killing him. And it certainly was a close call.
Yeah.
A classmate said that he was incredibly intelligent and right-leaning. The Republican talking point is that, Democrats have, we should show, that's a picture of Thomas Crooks. We should show what one of his classmates at school said about him.
Yes.
Yeah, he was bullied almost every day.
In what way, can you explain?
He would sit alone at lunch. He was just an outcast, and you know how kids are nowadays, so they're gonna see someone like that and they're gonna target him because they think it's funny or whatever. So it's the best way I can describe it. And it's honestly kind of sad. I don't want to say this is what provoked it, but you never know.
Yeah, you said he was a loner.
Yeah. I want to say he was a loner more because he was quiet, but he was just bullied. He was bullied so much.
So, it's disturbing always to hear the way other kids talk about bullied kids that's what happens to outcasts.
Well, the guidance counselor said, oh, no, he wasn't bullied. He was fine. His friends were eating lunch at a different time, so he wanted to eat lunch alone.
Well, whatever. We'll learn more as time goes on. The Republican talking point is that Democrats have identified Trump as an existential threat to democracy, which he is.
Of course.
He is all that, and the politician with the most violent rhetoric in memory, of course. By the way, one of his threats was to Liz Cheney, that he was going to give her a military trial. I misidentified her last week as Lynn Cheney, her mother.
Yeah. Well, this is a guy, Trump, who has celebrated the attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband in their home, the violent attack that almost killed him, celebrated the kidnapping of Gretchen Whitmer, the attempted kidnapping, celebrated the violence of the January 6th insurrectionists at the U.S. Capitol.
And said that, at these demonstrations, you should just shoot people in the legs.
Exactly. And if there's a dissenter in the crowd, beat him up. Go after him.
Right.
And then blames Democrats for no reason at all for the attack on him.
Well, so, here we have someone who was bullied every day in school lashing out at the bully in chief. It's a horribly wrong thing to do, of course. These violent outbursts don't come from nowhere.
Well, I'm particularly offended, though, by all the editorial comment and media statements about this is not America.
Oh, please.
It's America every day.
It's the American way.
It has been for decades and decades and decades, centuries.
And, you've got a party, the Republican Party, which promotes gun use and gun ownership, which is out of control. And this kid could get his father. Why not have at least, some law that says if your father has an AR-15, he has to keep it locked up and you can't have it.
I haven't heard, maybe you have, I have not heard a single statement from any Republican about gun control and about the availability of this gun.
And you won't.
No. Meanwhile, of course, the Proud Boys and white supremacists are very excited about this right-wing thrust of the Republican Party. And the Patriot Front was conducting marches in Nashville, masked.
Well, and let's talk. We haven't heard your perspective on Biden, but some Dem strategists are now saying that the Democratic message that Trump is an extremist is now dead, and that the assassination attempt froze calls to tell Biden to step aside and doomed his reelection. Others think that he can remind voters that Trump is a chaos maker. So I don't,
I have no easy answer on this. I think Biden is in bad shape. If you really want to be scared, read Olivia Nuzzi's piece in the latest New York Magazine, where they have several reports from their writers about Biden's state of health, and hers is really scary. But then he goes on air and he seems, reasonably okay. But
that's not good enough when you're up against such a threat.
Look, do I wish we had a different candidate? Yes, I do. But do I know who is best to beat Trump? No, I don't.
I think the issue is it's not that people are going to now go who are disturbed by Biden are now going to vote for Trump.
No,
they just don't want to give an 81-year-old guy who's going to be 82 soon 4 more years to go downhill, because we all know what happens as people age.
Well, I certainly assume, and I assume they do too, that if you get him over the finish line with the election, then he can either disappear voluntarily or involuntarily, and Kamala takes over.
It was an extremely close election last time.
Yes.
Barring some October surprise, I'm sadly say I don't see how he survives all this. But.
Well, I don't either, but I do think, I've been saying with great confidence for months that he was going to win and the Democrats were going to win. And I believed that right up until the debate.
Right.
And that changed everything.
Sure.
That was shocking.
And that makes us look at him every day, everything he says, and he keeps making the same mistakes he's always made in his life.
Yeah, but it's a difference of degree, a great degree, and it really was shocking to see him in such terrible shape at that debate, and he tries to excuse it as I had
a bad day.
I had a bad day. I had a cold. I had a cold during my vacation,
here you are.
But here I am. Maybe, but maybe not in good enough shape to continue my presidency
You're
here.
doing very well. I'm not patronizing.
Well, look, I would not be averse to the Democrats getting themselves together and replacing him on the ticket. Andy Tobias and big donors are in favor of that, but it's always the big donors who
Andy
are.
Tobias was the out-gay treasurer of the Democratic Party for many years.
Yeah.
All right,
So
well,
I don't know. What's your latest thinking on it?
I want to see someone else heading the ticket to somebody stronger. More inspiring, younger, more inspiring. I think that's what we need, and I think he needs to recognize that. I do
too.
It's been said repeatedly. He said he ran because he was he wanted to.
I'm the only one who can beat him.
Protect us, but it's not true. When it's not true now, and you got to look at the polls, people don't want him.
Well,
Democrats don't want him.
Maybe he is well, some do.
We're going to vote for him if he's the candidate. That's
I know,
not the issue.
but how many will? Maybe he's waiting until after the Republican convention to make his move.
We don't know. But of course, the Republicans are always making their moves against us in the House, which they control narrowly. But there was this bill called the Legislative Branch Appropriations Act that created a license for people and organizations, including those receiving taxpayer funds, to discriminate against LGBTQ people under the guise of religious liberty, such as the belief that marriage should only be between a man and a woman. Under this provision, now this bill was narrowly defeated by some Republicans who didn't like some other stuff in it, but under it, if a Capitol Police officer denied entry to the same-sex spouse of a Congress member to an event, the officer could not be penalized. That's the kind of stuff that they're proposing.
Yes, and as you say, that was defeated, but the House Republicans also passed an attack on Title IX's protections of trans, gay, pregnant, sexual assault survivors. They want to cut all of us out of the Title IX protections, and we expect that that will not go through, that it will be changed in the Senate or Biden will veto it, but this stuff is getting very close, and with Manchin changing sides.
Yes. By the way, we should talk about Vance a little bit more before we move on.
Okay.
Our horror show was very good a couple of years ago, telling us that we have his own posting, which basically says he compared Trump to Adolf Hitler. He said he'd be a disaster. He's the fruit of the party's collective neglect. It's, he had nothing good to say about Trump, but now, well, when he wanted to run for U.S. Senate in Ohio, he needed Trump. And by the way, Vance was brought to power by Peter Thiel,
Yes.
who gave him $10 million. And Thiel has great expectations for Vance. I think he wanted him on this ticket very badly, and that's where we are.
Well, Tucker Carlson evidently called Trump and said, if you don't put Vance on the ticket, if you put one of these other namby-pamby types on, you're going to have a total revolt on the floor of the convention.
Well,
So here's what Vance thinks now in the wake of Donald Trump. He would have, unlike Pence, he would have stopped the counting of ballots in 2020. He is virulently anti-abortion, against Ukraine aid. I don't care about Ukraine. Wants to cut Social Security and
supports
Medicare.
the Great Replacement theory.
Against anti-discrimination laws, against the Equality Act, against trans people, against trans youth medical care, against diversity, equity, and inclusion, against IVF, against gun control, against divorce.
And
If you are in a violent marriage, stay there.
he just called the United Kingdom the first Islamist country with nuclear weapons under the new Labour government. By the way, Trump voters out there, he called you idiots
2 years ago, I'm sure.
and called Trump cultural heroin. So,
Yeah, but that's,
oh, that was a couple of years ago.
yes, it is. Do you think it makes any difference now?
I hope that we'll just keep running his quotes. But you
Well,
think
we will, but he'll just say, he has an answer and he says, I was wrong. That's what he says. And people, look, we've got a guy with 34 felony counts, a sexual assault case, a fraud case, and, grabbing women by the you-know-what.
Correct.
And he's the nominee of the party. You think people care what J.D. Vance said 2 years ago?
I think if you run enough of those things, wait a minute. The condemnations of everybody who worked for Trump in the last administration
Yes.
have condemned. You keep running these things, it'll at least keep our voters away from him, and then we'll see, and maybe wake them up to the existential threat.
Well, that goes back to my prediction that, yes, we can beat him, but Biden has thrown a monkey wrench in all of that.
Yes, and that's why, it's
me-
not up to us.
But I'm happy to see that Tony Perkins and the far right are angry about what the Republicans are doing, because they held platform committee meetings behind closed doors, wouldn't let the press in, and wouldn't accede to any of the far right's demands for the platform. Not that the platform means anything, and not that they won't come join the party in lockstep, but it's just a slight amusement.
And they're furious that bisexual rapper Amber Rose spoke to the convention.
Again, who cares? But the convention, the Republican convention, has been a feast of trans bashing.
Yes.
I'm sorry that we're taping this show on Wednesday afternoon when Vance is speaking tonight, because I think that will be
Well,
quite
this has
an
become
event.
the refrain. It was the refrain in the United Kingdom in their election, trans bashing.
Yep.
They think it's their way to success.
We'll
talk
get to that,
more
yeah.
later.
Okay.
All right. By the way, Elon Musk is now giving $180 million to Trump.
Even as he flees California for Texas with his businesses, because California had the temerity to pass a law protecting teachers who want to support trans kids in their schools and saying they cannot rat on them to their parents.
Right. And so should we talk about Joe Manchin?
Okay.
Well, he joined Senate Republicans to support amendments to the must-pass defense authorization bill that restricts gender-affirming care for trans military personnel and their families, banning sex change surgeries, that's a quote, and preventing the military health system from offering hormone therapy, puberty blockers, and other treatments for trans minors. It passed 13-12. He's an independent senator. He voted against us. Manchin has a score from HRC of 55%, and Senator Schumer is still trying to get him to run as an independent.
Well, because
to save us from a Republican.
From Justice, the governor
Yes.
who's now running for Senate?
Right.
Yeah, well, I say spend your time elsewhere.
And then Democratic Senator John Ossoff of Georgia stopped the nomination of Sarah Netburn for a federal judgeship in the Southern District of New York, where we are, over his concern that she once recommended a trans woman be transferred to a women's prison, which was recommended by 3 wardens. It's the first time a Democrat has voted against a Biden nominee. Republicans, of course, had a field day with reports that this inmate exposed herself to other inmates.
No evidence of that.
But-
And she had serious medical needs, which could be best be taken care of in the women's prison, and there's no record of
nine
bad
other
behavior.
nominees were advanced because we need to do better than this Supreme Court.
Oh, and you talked
which is
about
all the Trump people.
Your clever headline talked about Trump dodging 2 bullets,
Yes.
and the first, of course, was at the rally in Pennsylvania. But the other bullet he dodged was in Florida, where Judge Eileen Cannon, as predicted, as everyone knew from the get-go, let him off the hook on the documents case.
Yeah, she avoided making decisions in the case because then they could be appealed. So she just kept delaying things. Now she says, I think enough time has gone by. I think I can just kill this whole thing. And that's what she did.
Well, she killed it on the grounds that she took advantage of a statement by Clarence Thomas in the Supreme Court presidential immunity case. He had written a concurrent opinion, joined by no one, that included a phrase about how the special prosecutors may have been appointed unconstitutionally. So she said, aha, well, Jack Smith is the one prosecuting Trump in this documents case. He's the special prosecutor. He was appointed by the Attorney General, so that must be unconstitutional. So I'm dismissing this case.
But now, since the Supreme Court has made presidents totally unaccountable to anyone, I mean, technically impeachment, but that never happens because you can never get 2/3 to do that. They're not criminally liable. Biden could say to the Justice Department, stick somebody else in there right from the department, take up the case and get it going.
Well, they're going to appeal this decision of Cannon's.
But I mean, stop with the niceties.
Yeah.
Just appoint somebody, get it done.
I'd be for that. Because there's no question that this case should be a slam dunk.
Well, the immunity case, of course, is the end of the republic.
All right, so we're thrilled to see that the country is waking up to Project 2025 and its threats. It seemed a little tough to get the country to pay attention to a 900-plus page document from the Heritage Foundation that lays out the game plan for the Trump administration starting in 2025. But lo and behold, people are paying attention. People magazine did a whole thing on Project 2025. The 19th website, which is an excellent journalistic site, has done a great discussion of the whole thing. And not to be outdone by any of this, the Gay Furry Hackers group, what is their name? I've got this somewhere.
I do. It's, Sieged Sec.
Yes. There are some of them. They have gone after the Heritage Foundation, hacked some of their sites, and put out more information about Project 2025. They're so cute, the Gay Furry Hackers.
Well, Michael Howell of the Heritage Foundation vowed to expose them, lecturing them on bestiality, and said, you won't be able to wear a furry costume when you're getting pounded in the, I'll say rear here, in the federal prison I put you in next year.
Oh, my God. Oh, this is the Unity Party?
This is the Heritage, the Unity Party. No, yeah.
Well, there will be a rally in Times Square in New York next Saturday, July 27th at 7 p.m. to stop Project 2025.
Stop the coup 2025.
Yep. So if you want to come out and just have a nice evening of rallying against Project.
Venting.
Yes, exactly.
We need to be with each other. This is something that we are all going to need to do with each other. Look, we grew up in a society where there were very few LGBTQ rights. We won some of them. We may lose some of them, but we need each other.
So Saturday the 27th, 7 p.m., Times Square, Stop Project 2025.
And in terms of violence, lest we forget, it was only last week when extremist Mark Robinson, the GOP candidate for governor of North Carolina, encouraged religious conservatives to kill leftists. And this week, he was running away. That's the picture of him running away from reporters trying to question him about it. Not to mention that he said his God created him to do battle against LGBTQ rights, says trans kids are being mentally raped by their parents. And of course, he's a black man. He said to liberals, I'll accept gay pride when you accept white pride. His Democratic opponent, State Attorney General Josh Stein, North Carolina, I hope you know what to do.
So he was being questioned by reporters about who exactly is it you think should be killed, because that's what he said, they should be killed. And so he fled into that elevator. He wouldn't answer the question, and he wouldn't even stand there and not answer the question. He fled. Well, we're learning some interesting things about Mark Robinson. He used to run a child care center. Many violations have turned up against the child care center. So
34 felony counts, perhaps?
And I wouldn't be surprised. He has also been cited for bankruptcies and unpaid taxes. So this is your candidate for governor in North Carolina by the Republican Party.
North Carolina, we used to think you were the new South. Well, they do have a Democratic governor now.
Yes, they do.
You know?
Florida. They've gotten an abortion referendum on the ballot for November that would, because the legislature passed a 6-week limit on abortion. And so citizens put together a referendum and got it approved for the ballot. And so we're very happy about that. But those Republicans were not satisfied to stand back with that happening. So a state panel has rewritten the statement that goes along with these ballot measures of its projected financial impact. This is a standard thing that happens with ballot referenda. They include a little statement that says, here's the financial impact if you pass this. Well, of course, they wrote a financial impact statement that says, well, there are going to be tons of lawsuits, and there's going to be this, and there's going to be that. So they have just gone to town to try to undermine this.
I have faith in Floridians on this issue, although you need to produce a 60% vote if you're going to do it. And by the way, Ohio, which did vote to maintain abortion rights, has Bernie Moreno as the Republican U.S. Senate candidate.
Is it Bernie or Benny?
Maybe it is Benny. I thought it was Bernie. But anyway, he's up against veteran Democrat Sherrod Brown, who is holding his own in the polls there, despite it being
He's the greatest.
Moreno came out.
People ask me who I want as a ticket to replace.
Oh, yes.
I want Tammy Duckworth and Sherrod Brown.
My choices, too, in either order. Anyway, Moreno came out for a national ban on abortion, a position Trump is trying to hide. And that's the thing. Even the New York Times had a headline the other day, Trump moderates a platform on abortion. No, he didn't. The Republican platform calls for using the 14th Amendment basically to protect fetal personhood.
So if the Republicans take over the Senate and the House and the presidency, and Trump and Vance have said this should be a state issue. If the Senate and the House pass a national ban on abortion, do people think that Trump is going to veto that?
Of course not.
No.
All right. Let's move on. In Minnesota.
Oh, this is happy little news. In Minnesota.
Well, I was talking about I was going to talk about some deaths, but all right. Well, let me go back to some other things. All right, we should not move on. Oh, I better do some other news before we get to these really bad ones.
Okay.
I'll put that later.
All right, let's do Pine City, Minnesota, since we're doing politics. Pine City, small town in Minnesota, has elected a gay mayor, Kent Bombard, who worked in IT. Now, I love this picture of Kent Bombard, the new out gay mayor of Pine City, Minnesota. Congratulations to you, Kent, and to the citizens of Pine City who have elected you.
Okay.
That's good. A footnote, political footnote, Judith Kaysen Windsor, the widow
Yes.
of Edie Windsor, was invited to speak at an event in the Hamptons in New York as a Jew at a rally for Israel. And she agreed to do that, but she was going to introduce herself as a proud, out gay Jew. And they said no. No.
You're being too political.
It's too complicated. This is a one-issue rally, and you are going to stick to that. And she said, no, I'm not. I'm going to be who I am.
And now more attention has been drawn to it.
No gay stuff, they said to her.
Yeah.
So she was disinvited.
In Mobile, Alabama, an event celebrating an LGBTQ-themed children's book at a restaurant was canceled due to escalating threats. Finding My Rainbow, a picture book by Alabama Pride President Josh Coleman. A portion of beer sales were to be given to AIDS Alabama. The book contained no sexual content, just about young Josh navigating growing up, discovering his identity, seeking acceptance.
In Brooklyn, New York, at PS 139, parents are petitioning for a GSA at the school, the elementary school. And the school doesn't want to let them do it.
They have to. I mean, you have to do it in Alabama, too.
Well,
it's federal law.
They're being ignored. This is the strategy. You know, you don't say no, you just ignore it. You don't answer any requests.
Get the school's chancellor on it.
Yeah.
In Tennessee, a federal appeals court ruled 2-1 that the state may ban trans people from changing the sex designation on their birth certificates. 11 states do allow a change of a birth certificate based solely on a declaration of gender identity, which is what the plaintiffs were seeking in Tennessee. It's a lambda legal case.
And also in Florida, the state is denying birth certificate gender changes. They used to allow them, but now they are denying them. And when the lawyers for the people trying to change their gender identity on birth certificates try to appeal, they are ignored. The state is just not answering the requests for birth certificate gender identity change.
But in Florida, a federal judge has refused to stay his decision, striking down Florida's restrictions on gender-affirming care. Judge Robert Hinkle said, to do otherwise will cause needless suffering and will increase anxiety, depression, and the risk of suicide for transgender Floridians. He also said the evidence that animus motivated at least some legislators is overwhelming, indeed undisputed. A legislator called transgender people demons, imps, and evil, and a sponsor said good riddance to any transgender individual who leaves the state.
Wow. And in Missouri, the court there has ruled that the heinous attorney general has no right to the medical records of trans kids, which he's been trying to get. He is appealing that, and he's going to go after the records through other means. He's going to, instead of going to the hospitals, he's going to therapists to subpoena their records. He's not giving up. It's a witch hunt. It is.
And out in Nassau County, my home county out on Long Island, where I grew up, the legislative ban on trans girls and women from participating in girls and women's sports at county facilities was signed into law by County Executive Bruce Blakeman, who wants to be governor, I think. The New York Civil Liberties Union and the Attorney General are suing him again on behalf of the Long Island Roller Rebels, a roller derby group that welcomes trans women on their teams.
All right. And also in New York State, there is a bill on the governor's desk to decriminalize or to repeal the 1907 adultery law.
Yes.
We're waiting to see whether the governor is going to sign this repeal. What's taken her so long? In the last 50 years, exactly 13 people have been charged with adultery, and only half of those actually went to any kind of resolution.
And mostly women are the targets. But New York's High Court has allowed, finally, the state ERA on the ballot in November. It covers sexual orientation, sex, gender identity, and reproductive rights. The right wing will be calling it an attack on girls' sports and a license for minors to get gender-affirming care. And that's the campaign Republicans are going to run against Democrats across the country, basically. And hope now Democrats put this on the ballot because they thought it's going to boost our vote, but it's going to be a fight.
It is.
But I was nice to see Ted Snowden, for instance, donating $50,000 to the campaign to pass it, and the AFL-CIO endorsed it this week.
Good. And the latest chapter on school superintendent Ryan Walters in Oklahoma. He has hired Christian nationalists to write the social studies curriculum for Oklahoma public schools.
In California,
Shameless.
Governor Gavin Newsom, Ann mentioned this in relationship to Musk, signed the Safety Act strengthening protections for LGBTQ youth in schools and protecting educators who create safe and affirming classrooms, and also providing resources for LGBTQ youth and their families to have conversations about identity and on their own terms. And this is, again, one of the reasons Musk says he's leaving California.
And good news from a suburb of San Francisco in California, where 2 school board members have been recalled because of their anti-LGBTQ actions, like banning pride flags. They sort of ran for they ran for the school board sort of under the radar, and then they get on the school board and they start passing all these terrible resolutions and laws. But
it was a parent who led the recall.
Yeah.
And you know, he says, I just want to bring a more boring way of life back to our town.
I think we all feel that way about the whole country. We're tired of all these headlines and all these crazy things happening.
A footnote from Pride Month. At least 27 smaller cities and towns held Pride events for the first time this year, including Prattville, Alabama, Seward, Alaska, Concord, Massachusetts, and Harpers Ferry, West Virginia, where the last Civil War started. As times darken, these events will be more needed as signs of resistance. We have to keep them up, no matter what happens.
Oh, and a footnote to Elon Musk leaving California for Texas. His company X, formerly Twitter, has suspended a lot of LGBTQ marketing accounts, claiming that user reports complained about these accounts, but no further explanation of who it was who complained or what the complaint was.
Okay.
He seems to be on a rampage, and he has a lot of power.
Let's talk about some violent incidents.
Let's
if you
do.
don't mind. In Minnesota, trans woman Liara Kaylee Tsai, Tsai, 35, was found.
Probably Shay.
Shay was found dead in a single car crash on June 22nd in Olmsted, California, 100 miles south of Minneapolis. And police determined she had not been killed by the crash, but by a knifing by an acquaintance. The driver of the car, Margot Lewis, also trans, was taken into custody and charged with felony interference with a dead body and second-degree murder. Tsai was a DJ and music producer who had moved from Iowa City to Minneapolis to advance her career and live with a larger trans community.
Worked as a crisis counselor for the Trevor Project, which said she was wonderfully effective and empathetic to young people, and spent 8 years in the Air Force.
Yes.
Trevor mentioned her empowering gentleness.
And then in Atlanta, a doctoral student was found dead Saturday in Birmingham, Alabama, 2 days after disappearing from a family gathering on July 4th. The coroner has ruled the death of Deundre Cottrell, 31, a homicide. The suspect, Julian Taylor Morris, said by family and authorities to have had a romantic relationship with Cottrell. Morris hadn't been seen since the Ring camera footage showed Cottrell running for his life.
Yeah, from the house. Sad. And not a death, but more violence in Provo, Utah. Drag queen and bookstore owner and activist Tara Lipsinski was attacked as a groomer by the libs of TikTok, which provoked bomb threats for her bookstore. She ended up having to sell her family home. She was attacked by the Proud Boys as a result of all of this.
Yes.
It's unbelievable, the violence that is provoked by this hate.
And local authorities did nothing to help her. Her husband was hospitalized from the stress. She's asking for donations to the United Drag Alliance so she can continue her work in Utah. She has no intention of leaving.
And in British Columbia, Canada, a trans male teacher, Wilson, a high school art teacher, has filed a human rights complaint, after being doxxed by libs of TikTok.
Which is, Rachik, this woman Rachik, right?
Yeah.
Yes, from Brooklyn, who does all this.
Well, it was the mom of one of her students, this teacher's students, who started this online harassment. The student's mom calls herself Blonde Bigot online. And
Charming.
This provoked hateful, violent messages. We have a little video of Wilson being interviewed.
Like calling me a groomer, a sick pervert.
Countless online messages of hate and violence sent to art teacher Wilson.
A variety of slurs and accusations. It's all in relationship to that I'm a teacher.
The messages coming from a social media account called Blonde Bigot. The alleged person behind that account, Joanna Evanson, a parent of a high school student where Wilson teaches. Global News reached out to Evanson for comment but did not hear back. In November, things get worse when an X account known as Libs of TikTok shares Wilson's name, picture, and place of work to its 3 million followers, an online act known as doxing.
When parents or individuals in our community see an educator that they don't agree with, they can use the power of social media to target that individual and, without a lot of regulation and a lot of oversight, basically make that person's life a living hell.
Wilson says there's been an onslaught of hateful messages from strangers. Fearing for their safety, Wilson is now off work and has just filed a human rights complaint against Evanson.
Trans people are targeted directly, and they're also targeted when organizations like Libs of TikTok get involved and send tsunamis of hate mail. And the reason that it's important to file a human rights complaint is to hold accountable the people who are doing that.
Wilson says the complaint will also let others facing transphobia know they have options.
Empower more trans people, more queer people, more people who are experiencing harassment and violence and threats and degradation that does violate our human rights.
The complaint process will likely take a couple of years. Travis Prasad, Global News.
So this woman in Brooklyn doesn't care how many lives she disrupts.
No.
None of them do.
They're, yes, that is harass, destroy. That is their MO.
And they laugh about it.
Well, one conviction in the killing of Blaze Bernstein.
6 years ago.
Yes, 2018.
We have a picture. So they finally convicted Samuel Woodward of murder as an anti-gay and anti-Jewish hate crime in Orange County, California, Superior Court.
Is that him on the left, the killer?
Yes, on the left. And sentencing is set for October 25th. Woodward faces life without possibility of parole. Blaze's parents called their son, a University of Pennsylvania student at the time of his death, an amazing humanitarian. Woodward was affiliated with Autowaffen, a far-right neo-Nazi group. They knew each other from high school. That's why they were in the same place. But it's a complicated story, but he's guilty.
All right, and now a few minutes to remember people that we actually cared about who we lost this last week. First, Dr. Ruth.
Yes.
Ruth Westheimer.
She brought her Sexually Speaking radio sex advice show to radio in the early 1980s. She's died at 96, bringing a mostly non-judgmental approach to her call-in listeners. She also wrote 40 books on sex. Her rise came, of course, as AIDS was exploding, and people couldn't talk about sex in those days on the radio and on television, and that really helped. And she was a great advocate on this. She defended LGBTQ people and rights against far-right Christians. Given her own German Jewish background, she's a child of the Holocaust. Her parents died in the Holocaust and shipped her to Switzerland. That's how she survived. She taught university courses in sexuality. She criticized the Catholic Archdiocese of New York on her show for telling people to just indulge themselves, telling people that they were just being indulgent if they followed her. She herself was a square who believed in monogamy, but she did a lot of fundraisers for AIDS research.
And we have an interview that you did with her at, what?
1992 Democratic Convention.
The fact that the Republicans are trying to make a lot about Democratic support for gay and lesbian rights, for abortion, things and issues of that nature, and saying that that's anti-family.
That's why I'm at this convention. And that's why I'm voting Democrat. And I want to tell you something seriously. I believe that if when Clinton and Gore are going to win, I would like
How do you know?
I know. I'm here. I want a family czar in the White House. I don't want to wait until we have a drug czar. I need people to take care of the family in its widest meaning, like homosexual couples and extended families and all of those issues. So I do believe that we have to talk about issues of family life, and we do have to put the emphasis. What I love about this convention, when I walked around, I loved that we have old people. I'm 64, a grandmother, and look around here, look at all of the young people. That's what it's all about.
That's 32 years ago.
Yes, it is.
And she fought those who tried to shut down porn unless it was violent or exploitative, and of course, shutting down porn is one of Project 2025 goals. It is. It's explicit.
It is. And in Dayton, Ohio, we lost Clara Razish, 92 years old, wife of a pastor. They were co-presidents of the local PFLAG in Dayton. She was very well known for all her rainbow regalia that she wore all the time and her support for LGBTQ people.
Yep, and very active with her church. And a memorial service is going to be held there at the Harmony Career Church in Kettering, Ohio, on August 10th at 1 p.m.
And Richard Simmons, who died at age 76, exact cause of death still under investigation.
Well, he did the best-selling home exercise video of all time, 1988 VHS, Sweatin' to the Oldies, earning more than $200 million. But he never opened up about his sexual orientation, though he was nothing if not flamboyant.
Certainly.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. He was once rumored to be dating, a guy, blah, 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 but he never talked about it. But he was a guy who was 268 pounds and as a teen, and through diet and exercise, got in shape and urged the same on us.
Out of the public eye for the last 10 years, many people begging him to make himself public, but he didn't, and now he's gone. All right, international news.
Well, in Japan, the Hiroshima High Court ruled that a transgender woman does not have to get gender confirmation surgery in order to be recognized as a woman. That's a first for Japan.
Yeah. But in the UK, the Labour government, the new Labour government, is going to extend the Conservatives' temporary block on puberty blockers and try to make it permanent.
Even though it's not based on clinical and scientific evidence.
No. There are a couple of new books out by trans people that may be of interest. Ricky Wilchins, who is a longtime trans activist, haven't seen her recently, but she was very active, has been for a long time. She's written a book called Bad Ink: How the New York Times Sold Out Transgender Teens. And she talks about how A.G. Sulzberger took over as publisher in 2015 and
No. A.G. Sulzberger.
Yes. Right. Because his father was great on LGBTQ issues, but it started to change when he took over.
And Joseph Kahn, the executive editor, has been pushing trans-skeptical copy.
Tons of stories and op-eds. Pamela Paul, who I would like to have fired, is writing terrible stuff about trans people.
One of the things that Ricky Wilchins goes into is that trans youth surgery regret is much less than cisgender youth surgery regret. And out of 200,000 NCAA athletes that you're so concerned about, 50 are trans.
Yeah.
That's 1/4 of 1%.
Which brings us to the second book you might want to take a look at by a trans woman who is a hurdling star, Cece Telfer, Make it count, my fight to become the first transgender Olympic runner.
Well, she won the first out trans woman to win a major title, the NCAA Division II 400 meters for Franklin Pierce University. But in 2021, USA Track and Field denied her an opportunity to compete in the Olympic trials, arguing she did not meet the hormone level requirements.
So we see week after week in stories we're telling that the Olympics is becoming friendlier to non-binary people, people who are out LGBTQ, I'm leaving the T out, but trans people are still put in a separate category and discriminated against and treated with hatred and ignorance.
That daughter of the Cameroon president who came out, we told you about that last week, Brenda Baya, she got an awful lot of backlash from the family. Her brother was very angry she didn't warn them, and her mother said, "Take that announcement down." She could be subject to the country's law criminalizing same-sex activity, a law used to harass and extort gay people.
I'm just going to put a footnote on the last discussion of the Olympics participants. The producer of the spectacles at the Paris Olympics coming up in a couple of weeks is an out gay man, Thomas Jolly, 42 years old. There he is with an Olympic flag. The opening ceremony is July 26th with a boat parade on the Seine, which they claim they've cleaned up, but no one is quite sure, even though the mayor went for a swim there. Closing ceremonies is August 11th. There are rumors that Lady Gaga might show up, but it's just a rumor.
Jolly was bullied as a kid, but he's said to have discovered his youthful freedom on the stage. All right, in Russia, all right?
Yep.
The court there sentenced out journalist Masha Gessen in absentia to 8 years in prison for comments about Russian soldiers committing atrocities in Ukraine. Gessen is Russian-born and lives in the U.S. Their interview on the atrocities has been viewed 6.6 million times on YouTube. It's about how the corpses of 400 civilians were found in a town that the Russians had devastated.
Yes, well, Ukraine has had problems about that of massacres in World War II, too. There's a whole story about that. But
Masha says they're heartbroken by this judgment.
Well, because not only are they forbidden now to go to Russia without risking arrest and 8 years in prison, see Brittany Griner, if you don't believe that's real, but they are also subject to arrest and deportation to Russia from countries that have an extradition treaty with Russia. And that is a much larger universe of countries.
Right. In the Philippines, Mandaue City on Cebu is the latest there to pass an LGBTQ rights bill. More than 30 cities now in the Philippines protected. They've had an LGBTQ rights bill in the Congress there for 20 years. We've had one here for more than 50 years and can't pass it.
Yes, a couple of African countries with bad news. Burkina Faso, the military junta there has drafted a family code amendment that will outlaw homosexuality. And Malawi's constitutional court has rejected a lawsuit by two citizens challenging their anti-LGBTQ law.
But a Dutch Supreme Court, the Dutch Supreme Court ordered civil marriage open to same-sex couples in Curacao and Aruba immediately.
Yep.
Politicians there have been debating it for years. The court said, you're not taking any action, we're taking action.
Exactly. You're taking too long. So it is now legal in 5 of 6 Dutch territories.
Yeah, watch out for Sint Maarten.
Yeah, where it is not.
In Poland, the new, more moderate Tusk government has finally agreed to draft a civil union bill. They said they were going to do it in 100 days. They didn't, but now they're going to do it. There were concerns in their coalition about it, so they're not going to let gay people adopt each other's kids automatically, that kind of stuff. But they don't want it to be similar to marriage.
What are you all so scared of? Really?
Well, power. It's all about power.
I know, but why on our backs? Congratulations to former Formula One race car driver Ralf Schumacher of Germany, who in his retirement has come out.
Most high-profile Formula One driver to do so.
Yeah, but he's been retired for some years.
He's in a relationship with his business manager, and he posted about it.
Well, that's why he came out.
All right, so AIDS news.
Yeah.
Veteran AIDS activist John Hatchett has died at 64. He was with the People with AIDS Coalition in New York from 1989 to 1996, the worst years of the pandemic in New York, coordinating volunteers, directing publications, and then serving as executive director. He was later director of the PWA Leadership Training Institute for more than 10 years. And during his PWA Coalition years, he had two major periods of illness, and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and meningitis. Before the advent of protease inhibitors, he was diagnosed with HIV in 1988, and having already been a volunteer with Jim HC. And so just a great guy. Memorial service, August 17th, details to come.
Another hacking story, not so nice, is the gay furry hackers going after the Heritage Foundation. This is something called Ransom Hub hackers, active in Florida now. They hacked into the state medical system and released 20,000 medical records online after the state refused to pay the ransom.
Yeah, we don't pay ransom, so you're just going to have to get exposed.
Well, this is a long history of these hacking attacks for ransom. It happens all over the world, and people have got to protect their systems better. And by the way, I have a golf friend who is looking for an IT job. If you need someone in IT, contact me. I'll refer you. But the vital statistics system in Florida is now down. Birth and death certificates not available. The ransomers released HIV test results, doctor's notes, COVID test results, lab results, names, dates of birth, social security numbers, insurance info, and a passport.
All right, entertainment news.
Protect your systems.
There is a new documentary about Abe Lincoln coming September 6th called Lover of Men. There's a picture of it. Lincoln scholars talk about Abe's devotion to men, including holding hands and cuddling in bed, letters he wrote to Joshua Speed. We have a picture there of Joshua, who he lived with and bedded with for a long time there in Illinois.
All of this was publicized by Larry Kramer years ago.
And Jonathan Ned Katz,
yes.
55 years ago.
And no one would listen to them, and they got criticized forever. How dare you say that about our great President Lincoln?
Oh, that's just the way they showed affection to each other in the 19th century. You don't know anything.
Yeah, well, we have 1 minute.
Okay.
Anyway, that's going to be in theaters soon. Director Sean Peterson, who says he's been trying to tell this story for years. Coming to Netflix November 13th, Emilia Perez, which is the movie that was a big hit at Cannes, won the jury prize. Married trans cartel leader and her wife. Keep an eye out for that. We'll remind you.
Well, what a week.
Oh, you have 30 seconds. I thought you had another story.
There's a new musical about singer Bobby Darin that's in the works for Broadway, and Tony winner Jonathan Groff, who's out, is set to play the lead.
That could be cute.
It's called Just in Time.
All right.
And we're finishing just in time.
Well, we have a few seconds. I just want to say
Welcome back.
Thank you. It's actually nice to be back. I was gone a long time, but I'll be back next week, and so will you, and we will see you then. Who knows what will happen before then?